All right, a very special guest with me today from all the way from Sweden. I'm so excited. Henrik Bergdahl, am I pronouncing that correctly, Henrik?
Yeah, that's close enough.
Close. Okay, yeah, Swedish is not my language, so there we go. He was kind enough to join me today. We're going to have a conversation about workplace mobbing. I know that you have a YouTube channel and you actually don't talk about workplace mobbing typically. That's not really what your channel is about. I think it's more firearms and politics in Sweden. But
yeah, not even politics. It's mainly just a hobby of hunting and sport shooting. And if you ever looked at YouTube channels regarding that, it's pretty crazy stuff, but not from a Swedish perspective. I'm pretty vanilla compared to Americans.
That's so true. That's actually really true. I've subscribed to a few of the channels, and yeah, no, it's yours is very interesting. But how I found you was a video that you did close to 10 years ago about workplace mobbing. And mobbing is not a term here in Canada. I don't know about Sweden. We don't even use that term here in Canada, mobbing. We use workplace bullying or work harassment, but even the concept of mobbing is really not too known about here in Canada whatsoever. And I know you've been talking about it for quite some time now. So can we get into a little bit of what that is and what the work you do on mobbing?
Yeah, sure. Let's start with mobbing as a word, because it's actually a useful word. Mobbing gives you the idea that it's a mob of people going against someone, and that is exactly what is happening. So to introduce myself in this little area, my YouTube channel has nothing to do with this. That's my hobby,
right?
And mobbing is part of what I do at work. So I have been working with the union in Sweden for God knows how long, and yeah, at least 15 years now or something. So so in Sweden, unions, we have a very strong union situation in Sweden. So everything is controlled by collective agreements. So we have strong laws that give power to the unions. Then we have collective agreements between the parts of the employers against the employees that regulates everything, basically. So stuff like bullying or workplace mobbing or harassment, whatever you want to call it, falls under this. So whenever there is an issue, the person can talk to their union rep who handles this, or if the union rep is in some way involved, which is not out of the realm of possibilities, then they can talk to the central union, and some external part can come in and help them. Yeah, so that's what I do. So just this year, I've handled 3 different cases of this, and they're never totally unique. There's always differences, but in general, there's 5 different steps to this. And the first one is avoidance and ostracizing of the target. That is pretty mundane. But if this happens at your workplace, if you see this happening to someone, try to befriend that person, talk to them, make sure nothing's going wrong there. Just be a human being. Then we have petty harassment, making the target's life difficult, whatever that entails in your workplace. That is a big red warning flag. And then we have next step is a critical incident that triggers formal sanctions. Something has to be done. That's the usual thing people say. Something has to be done. And these are usually bullshit. It's never something serious. If someone else did this, it wouldn't have been a thing. And the reason it becomes a thing is because during the avoidance and the petty harassments and everything, what they're doing is otherizing this person, makes it okay to harass, to bully, to mob this person. And everyone, they change their view on this person. I usually say this is kind of similar to racism, but in that case, it's against another race and on a national scale, I guess. But this is on the tiny microscopic scale at your workplace against a singular person. Doesn't really matter what race that person has, but the mechanisms are the same. Yeah, and after this triggering incident comes the fourth stage, the aftermath of the incidents. You're going to have hearings, appeals, mediation, HR is getting connected and whatnot. And usually what happens here is a lot of people make enough fuss that HR kind of feels they have to do something, or the management or whatever. And the reason this happens in the first place is because the management is weak. It is a bad management. Nothing would have happened from the start if there was a good management. Usually the reason this starts is we have a bad, weak management that cannot really lead the workplace. And then you have an informal leader that comes up and kind of takes charge on the side. And this person who's harassed, that's usually a really talented person, someone who has new ideas, who comes with great suggestions. Of course, this informal manager is going to feel threatened. This informal manager, who is the ringleader of sorts, this person is usually some variant of sociopath. I don't know what the term is for that nowadays. That has changed.
Absolutely.
But that is someone without a conscience, but with a lot of empathy. A lot of empathy, because that person can manipulate people. It's a really good manipulator, and I've known these people many times.
Oh yeah,
they're horrible. Stay away from them. And another thing, this is very common in relationships where someone is gaslighted, made to feel that they're inadequate, and usually it's the man, but it can be the woman as well in a relationship that basically mobs in the tiny confines of the relationship. This person breaks down their will. All that is happening at the workplace in our examples here. It's horrible, and usually it can be a really strong woman or man. It's really sad when it's a really strong person as well, because they want to they know they're in the right. They know they're in the right, but it cannot be right because they have the management against them in this fourth stage. Everyone is against them. But since they started out at least as a strong person, they want to fight this injustice because it is an injustice. And they shouldn't. They should have seen the red flags, and they should have just ran the other direction immediately. So the most important thing I can tell anyone listening to this is see the red flags and just start running in the other direction. This is a toxic workplace. You cannot fix this. It's not just the sociopath doing this, it's the management allowing it to happen as well.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for your brutal honesty on that. I couldn't agree with you more based on personal experience, and without going into it, thank you for mentioning the management facilitating it, because now, in your opinion, in some of these cases, is it because the management is actively and openly covering up for criminal activity or a criminal in the organization, and so anybody who chooses to call that out or say, you know, I'm going to go to the police or whatever, that person gets mobbed? Is that common? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen something similar to what you're describing. I just want to mention the last stage. The last,
please
last
do.
stage
Absolutely.
is the person is fired, basically, or the target quits. That is the last stage. But you can't skip to the last stage. The sooner you can skip to the last stage on your own free will, that is the better, because you're going to take psychological damage, a lot of it. If you're a strong person and you keep fighting, that will just compound the psychological damage. You can get PTSD, a lot of different diseases, total stress. I don't know what the stressed out syndrome is in the American English.
Post-traumatic stress. Yes.
I've seen people be on sick leave for years after this happened. Being basically handicapped, and you don't want this. Get out as fast as possible. But speaking of illegal stuff, I've seen that. So a reason this happens in one place I worked at was because they abused the law on overtime. So they had too few employees, and they abused the law on overtime, basically stole money from people. And people who pointed this out got harassed because the middle managers knew about this, of course. And if someone complained, they basically started the process of trying to get rid of them. 1/3 of all the employees quit each year because of this. And it's not a business model to break the law and abuse people, but this is what they did. So Yeah, that shit happens,
It's
unfortunately.
insane. It's insane, isn't it? And actually, what you just said leads me to a really a big question then. Is mobbing a huge cost to organizations then? I mean, are you looking at, is this the main cause behind poor retention, poor turnover? Is that a
It
big
can
cause
be.
of it?
Yes, it can be. I've seen it
Okay.
in certain organizations where like one part of the organization keeps having keeps producing shitty results, having a great turnover of employees. Then it takes like months, half a year to train a new person to be fully self-sufficient at that job. And that's a big cost because they cannot produce, but they still get a salary, right? And other people has to help them. That lowers productivity for the entire department. So obviously it's a big cost. But then again, if you have really shitty management, they don't really see that. So if they can get, they will do this as long as they get away with it. So if you're working like me with the union, you have to basically pull the emergency brake on stuff and tell them this and this and that is illegal and you can't do that. You have to change this. But it's hard if you have management against you. You're gonna have to be a really strong person and don't get bullied yourself.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding, Henrik. And actually, I was going to actually ask you, but I know you're not a lawyer. I know you probably don't deal with this, but because the allegations against the target employees are so outrageous, and some of the people involved in this, have you ever seen things like defamation of character lawsuits? And the reason I'm going into that right now is because there was a mobbing that I was aware of. Two different employees were being mobbed at the same time, while the ringleader was also claiming that former employees had, by name, very serious lifelong sexually transmitted diseases. And I mean, I wouldn't want to be on the other end of that defamation lawsuit. Do you ever, I mean, what do you think of that? It's appalling. It's atrocious.
That depends on the laws in your country. I'm not familiar with your laws.
Right.
What we do in Sweden is we basically, so if someone, we try to end the employment on as favorable circumstances as possible for the person. Obviously, that person shouldn't continue to work at this place. It's right. Basically impossible to get that to work without further psychological damage, no matter if everyone shakes hands and says we're fine now. It just doesn't work. So what I do is, for example, one person got 8 months of, so they didn't have to go to work. They got their salary for 8 months, and they could take another employment and still get that salary check. So after 2-3 months, that person got another job at a better place, but still cashed in that check from the other employer. So she got double salary for like, what could it be, 6 months or something, which is fine, I guess. You could try to get, that wasn't a criminal thing, not criminal court or whatever, defamation lawsuit or anything like that. Right. That was just me telling the employer that if you don't do this, we could do that. So it is a psychological burden to go to court as well. And it's not certain that it can be word against word unless you have like really good evidence for something. And innocent until proven guilty is true even for assholes. So yeah, it's better to get to an agreement everyone can live with. So that's what I try to aim for in these cases. So the person in trouble gets to get away from the problems. Company can continue to be assholes if they don't want to do anything about it, but I'm going to tell them obviously to do something about it, and they have to pay for their stupid mistakes. So yeah, there's a tiny grain of justice in that, and the person can go on with their lives, right? My priorities are that the person affected can go on with their lives, and yeah, there's seldom real justice in these cases, very seldom.
I agree, and I think it's important for people to see that people like you and I, you know, we're still standing, and we, you know, you can get through it. You know, as horrible as it is. Can we talk about some coping mechanisms, I guess, like, would you say, I know you, I mean, it's so
Yeah.
hard to tell people what to do, but I suppose
it's hard to describe this.
Yeah.
You can view it as like a death in your family or something.
Yeah.
Imagine, so I saw a case where a person had worked for the same company for 20 years. Working at this company was her whole identity. She was a part of this company. She saw it grew up and all that.
Yeah.
And she was fired and kicked out after a stupid argument or something. And she was devastated. She was in shock, and yeah, it's very hard. It is very hard. And there are coping mechanisms, of course. I am a super pragmatic dude. I always try to look at solutions, and that has helped me. I don't try to dwell on what could happen or who's right, who's wrong, all that stuff. I try to look forward, and that's super hard to do. It's almost impossible when you're in the middle of something like that.
Yeah.
So usually nowadays, when I view these things, is from the outside. I try to talk to people and tell them. For example, not long ago, I had a meeting with a woman who has been mobbed, and the company cannot fire her, but I really want to fire her. So I told her that you are in the correct, you are right, but you'll never be right in the eyes of the company. You cannot get them to say that you're right. This will not happen. So don't try to get to that point, because you'll just cry. Instead, what is best for you now? How can you move forward to a better place from where you are right now? And I told her that we can do this, we can do that, and we can do that. These are our 3 options. The first one is going to be super hard and probably not going to be worth it. The second one is going to be hard, but it's going to buy you time where you can search for another employment. And the third one is we try to get a deal right now. So you don't have to come back here. You might you can perhaps get 3 to 6 months paid leave, and we'll see what kind of deal they feel that they can give you. So yeah, I try to look forward and look at solutions. What can we do? Where are we now? What can we do forward? What's the best place you can be at in a couple of months' time? And try to forget this bullshit. But as I said earlier, the really important thing to take out of a discussion like this is to see the red flags immediately. And if they're present, just start running. Start running immediately. So the the 5th step, I mean, is you're going to lose your employment. So try to jump to that one by and set your own boundaries. See if you see the red flags, just watch them and take action. And that action should be resign or get a new place of employment as soon as you can.
Okay. All right. And if you don't mind, just quickly, because I feel like some of the people who get themselves in situations don't know what the red flags look like. Maybe they've, come from abusive upbringings or whatever it is. Can we go over what a couple of those might be, or is that going to look very different for each?
Yeah, it's going to be different for everyone, of course, but it's so the low level, you have people avoiding a person or ostracizing a person, just being an asshole, pretty much.
Yeah.
But then you have active harassment, which is the next step. So you don't get invited to meetings you should have gotten invited to, or people talking around you like you're not even there, or talking shit about you. You start hear rumors about you. If it's gone that far, you should already resigned, actually. But yeah, even the small flags. And even if you see this happening to someone else, talk to that person and both leave, basically. Because the thing is, when this has happened to you and you're at the 5th stage and already out from that company, they're just going to pick the next target.
I was just going to ask you that. Thank you. I just had that in my notes. I was just going to ask you that. Okay, so this is a 2-part question then. I guess, do they immediately pick a new target, and are they ever going after 2 targets at the same time? This one has STDs there, and this one's a thief and a bully. Are they ever, like, how does that scapegoat work? Are they immediately going to pick a new one after the main one is gone?
It mainly depends on the informal leader. It can be how messed up that person is. It could be several people at once. I've seen one department who's had 3 people quit in the span of, oh no, 8 people in the span of 1.5 years.
Huh?
So they couldn't have taken it one at a time. It must have been several people at once. People just going from the office crying and stuff like that. So yeah, it depends, but usually it's dependent on the informal leader, if that person feels threatened for some reason and whatnot. So it's impossible to say, but it can happen, and it has happened in what I've seen. Yeah.
Oh, okay, and you know, kind of just one thing that I'm curious about before I let you go here is if you see this a lot, because I know a lot of people get very concerned about this, and it does happen, where they can one of these informal leaders or whatnot is still stalking the target after the expulsion or after the target resigns. Now, is this common, and should you just, I mean, it's just shocking to me that it would continue on after work, especially when the police can get involved at that point.
Yeah, those people who I had the unfortunate to get in trouble with over 10 years ago now, they're still stalking me.
Okay.
They're still talking shit about me.
Right.
So that'll never end. Unfortunately, they're in my hobby, so I can't really avoid them. It's a small, tight-knit community in Sweden. But yeah, in that case, I built my own community, and they're not invited.
Good. That you have, and keep those doors closed. And you know, thank you for doing this work in your union, at your job, because I don't even think in Canada, unless we have some very progressive union out there where people are really aware of these things, I don't even think this is very well known about in unions. I've had, you know, unionized environments. It's not even a word that's heard about here so much. So I'm, you know, thank you for doing that work in the job that you do, and thanks for having done a video about it. I'm really glad that I found you. I'm glad I met somebody else who deals with this, and you know, thanks for doing this chat with me, because I know it's gonna help other people who have been through this. And you know, keep up the great work you're doing on your channel as well. Like, where's the best place? I know like mobbing is definitely not going to be where. Do you ever do writings about mobbing or anything like that? Like, where's the best place for people to find you?
Well, if you want to watch me pewing, it is my YouTube channel.
I'll put a link.
Yeah.
I'll put a link there.
If you're interested in mobbing, there's actually, let me see here, a professor from University of Waterloo, Canada, Kenneth Westhus.
Yes,
I pronounced that right.
Yes.
So that's where I got the 5 stages from.
Excellent.
So there's some good reading there. But yeah, regarding my video I made a decade ago now, I get comments on it now and again, and it's people from all over the world. This is more common than you would imagine. People from India comment on that video saying, thank you, this helped me understand what happened to me. And this is knowledge that is not really widespread.
Right.
Actually, in Sweden, if you go, we have a webpage for our socialized health care, where you can get, if you have an ailment, you can look it up and see if you need to talk to a doctor, if you can do an exercise, whatever. And workplace mobbing is listed there with pretty much the information I gave you, more a little bit less, I guess. Okay. But yeah, and also contact information if you need help, psychological help and whatnot.
It's fantastic.
So it's taken seriously in Sweden. Fortunately, it still exists all over the place here as well, but there's some resources at least. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to send folks your way, and thank you very much again, Henrik, for doing this chat. It's a really tough subject, and you know, I'm glad that you're somebody who's tackling it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining me, Henrik.